Saladin is a hero even amongst the non-Muslims because of this act of generosity.
And this is what makes him magnanimous in the eyes of Europeans and the Crusaders. That they're magnanimous when they're strong. They never seek revenge. They always forgive, even their enemies. And even their enemies can acknowledge their magnanimity and generosity, which Saladin certainly received, not only his Muslim adversaries, but also the Crusaders at the time.
Most important battle that ever took place after the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It is a battle that every Muslim should know, every Muslim should be aware of, especially in light of current political circumstances, and that is the famous Battle of Hittin that took place in the year 583 Hijrah, corresponding to September 1187 CE. And of course, the Battle of Hittin is the famous battle where the greatest general after Khalid ibn al-Walid, and that is Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, reconquered our city of Jerusalem from the invading Crusaders after it had been in Frankish hands, in European hands for over 93 years.
Salahuddin captures Jerusalem in 1187, and he starts the struggle in 1177. So it takes him 10 years. This is a long time. But also the kingdom, or Crusader kingdoms, are very powerful because they're constantly getting help from Europe. Especially there are two orders. One is called Hospitallers, the other one is called Knights Templars. The Knights Templars were the richest order in the Christian world. They actually were organized throughout Europe, and usually they enlisted rich Christians. They poured money into Jerusalem, and with that money came, knights as well. And the knights were the trained fighters, usually very skilled. Saladin was a very cautious commander. He never attacked unless he was sure of victory. If you lost a battle, that was it sometimes. You lost everything. So you had to be very careful. And one of his principles is never enter into a battle unless you're sure of victory, or create the conditions that would lead to victory. And Saladin followed this principle throughout his campaigns to great success later in his life. Because of this, there were a lot of small encounters between 1182 to 1186. And the Crusaders had these massive fortified castles. It looks like a massive mountain, and it was very hard to get into. So you had to pull them out into open battle. Eventually it happens in the Battle of Hittin.
And the Battle of Hittin was a final assault that Salahuddin Ayyubi had been planning for many, many years.
It was now in the 1180s, 1185, 86, there was a truce between Salahuddin and a man called Raymond of Tripoli, who was one of the head of the Crusaders. But that truce was running out. The truce between Raymond of Tripoli and Salahuddin was coming to an end. Salahuddin, he had good reason not to renew the truce, or for a few reasons. There was a man called Reynaud de Chatillon. Reynaud de Chatillon was the Prince of Carac.
And in this time, between those 1182 to 1186, Reynaud of Chatillon emerges as the arch nemesis of Saladin as well. But this Reynaud of Chatillon, he was, the guy, fat orange in the movie of Kingdom of Heaven? That's the guy.
There was a link between Carac. What he did is he plundered a caravan en route, and he took the possessions, and he harmed the men, and he stole the money.
He actually attacks the trade caravans and the caravans of the pilgrims. Most of the time, both Crusaders and Muslims, if you attack Muslims' trade caravans, they could attack your trade caravans. So there was a bit of a convention between them. But Reynold, he did not listen to this. And for this reason, Saladin says, I'm going to execute him with my own hands.
And this was a violation of the truce. A violation of the truce. Now we must be fair to say that the Crusaders in Jerusalem did not like Reynold de Chatillon. They didn't even agree with what he did. But the fact was that he was one of their own. He was still a Crusader, and they're all Crusaders. And so then they needed to cover him up. But Salahuddin then, because of what he did, he had good reason not to renew the truce.
And in 1186, Saladin falls sick. And this sickness goes 2.5 months. And his eldest son is called. They're even writing down his will, and they're expecting him to die.
And this an illness, they thought he was going to die. Everybody was worried that Salahuddin's going to die because he had this major illness, but he recovered from it.
And he's saying, well, I still haven't done pilgrimage. I still haven't captured Jerusalem. And he sort of swears by God, say, if I survive this, I'm going to capture Jerusalem. And he does it in a year. Saladin was a very religious person. And especially when he became the ruler of Egypt, he kind of becomes more religious. He prayed 5 times a day, no matter what. He fasted all the time. Sometimes he couldn't fast because of the battle and conditions and so on. And he had his vizier or aides keep the number of days he wouldn't fast. And then later they would tell him how many days and he would make it up. He wanted to go to a pilgrimage, but he could never go in his lifetime. Actually, this was a very common thing, that rulers could not go to pilgrimage. The reason is that if you go, then your whole state empire is left to someone's attack. And everyone's just waiting like a hawk. And actually, with the Ottomans, none of the Ottoman sultans went to pilgrimage. They just couldn't. They actually got a fatwa for that. Yeah. Or special fatwa that would apply to them, out of necessity.
But then just as he recovered, his wife, Ismat ad-Din, dies. She dies.
Now, one of the tactics he used was to lure the Crusaders out of the castles.
And the idea, let's set out for Tiberias. We have much bigger army, stronger army, we're fit, we're healthy. And if they were to come to Tiberias, they would have to travel from very far. And it's very hot. And they'll get very thirsty. And they'll die on the way. If they don't die on the way, they get too tired to fight. So what happens is that they all head for Tiberias.
And he does that to great success, or he just kind of lures them out. And especially at that time, the king is Lusignan. Guy de Lusignan was the king of Jerusalem, and along with the kings of other principalities, they decide to go out and face Saladin out in the battle, in the open, and they muster 20,000 strong army. And 20,000 for those times is very big. Like most of the times the battles are fought with 1,000, 2,000 people. And Saladin had an army of 30,000. And they take with them what's called the true cross. A true cross, it wasn't a complete cross, just surrounded in some woods, but later it was put into a metal enclosure. And that was, they took with them the true cross as well, like assuring victory. These kind of amulets or signs or relics was quite often used by the Crusaders to get that excitement and the belief that God is on their side. And Muslims are doing that, or thinking that God is on their side as well, not with relics, but with words as well. The Battle of Hattin is strategic masterpiece on the part of Saladin.
Now it's very hot, very hot. One of the first things Salahuddin does is he ignites fire scrubs, because he knew that the westerly wind would blow in the direction of the Crusaders. And so all around, fire scrubs. And the wind, the smoke, the ashes is blowing in the direction of the Crusaders. Not only are they so fatigued and so tired and so thirsty, but now they're kind of in this conundrum situation because the fire scrubs. Salahuddin, his army was very strong. What ensued then was a battle in the year 1187 called the Battle of Hittin.
And the armies, the Crusader armies lured out. He surrounds them from the back. And there's this skirmishes all the time, so the army is slowed down. The access to water is cut as well. And they burn fires at night, just close them, and they start making dhikr as well at night just to, put fear in their heart. And eventually there is a battle that takes place. It's a decimation of the whole Crusader army.
In fact, on the final day of the battle, the soldiers spent most of the night praying Taraweeh and Tahajjud. Most of the night they were praying Taraweeh and Tahajjud, asking Allah for victory, because they realized that without dua, nothing would happen. Without Allah being on their side, there was no point in all of the army and the weapons that they had.
What happened is Salahuddin, when all the prisoners were there,
the Guy de Lusignan is captured. Raymond de Chatillon of Chatillon is captured.
King of Jerusalem, Reynaud de Chatillon, Raymond of Tripoli, all of these are there. Salahuddin, he approaches the king of Jerusalem. This is king and king, king and king. And he invites Guy de Lusignan to Islam. But he doesn't accept Islam. In any case, he gave him some water to drink. After a hot day of fighting, have the water to drink. He drank from the water. Beside him was the shaitan, Reynaud de Chatillon, and he gives the cup of water to drink to Reynaud de Chatillon. He says, you have a sip of water. And then he began to gulp and gulp and gulp from the water. Salahuddin then speaks and says, in our custom, the king doesn't kill a king. Kings don't kill kings. And nor do we kill the one that we've just given water to. Because in our custom, water is like an offering of hospitality and peace and protection. We don't kill the one that we've given water to. So him, the king of Jerusalem, he's a king, and a king doesn't kill a king. And I gave him water to drink. I didn't give you water to drink. You gave him the water to drink. You gave the water. I didn't give the water to drink to him. And so he takes his scimitar and then he pushes him towards the others and they execute him.
And Saladin actually executes him himself, as he promised. And he says to Guy, it is not the want of kings to kill kings, but that man had transgressed all bounds, and therefore I treat him so. He just says he was a war criminal, basically.
What's left then? Jerusalem, but also the Crusader states. And Salahuddin is left in this predicament. What does he do first? Try and take the coastline of Sham or Jerusalem? The heart is saying Jerusalem, but in essence the mind would have been the Crusader states, because if you don't take them, you always leave an avenue open for the Crusaders to launch another attack against you. In any case, he went for Jerusalem. Now look at this, what happened in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has no king, because the king now is captured and taken into exile.
And then Saladin swiftly moves to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem's got no one really to defend the city.
And so it was in the final days of Ramadan that Salahuddin al-Ayyubi won over the Frankish kingdoms, and he entered the city of Jerusalem.
Then Balin of Abirin, or Iberin, is the one who's in charge, the only one left behind. Actually, some negotiation takes place, and in the end, Saladin, there's an agreement that on the payment of a small ransom, everyone will be set free to go on the condition that the city is turned over to Saladin. Now, this was really unheard of at the time, because the first thing, what was expected was Salahuddin to kill everybody, because the first Crusaders did exactly that. The whole inhabitants of the city, Muslims and Jews particularly, were killed after the first crusade. And actually the whole city is empty, and then migrants come in later to inhabit this whole city. So the expectation was that Salahuddin repeats that, but he doesn't.
When the Christians had entered Jerusalem 90 years ago, they slaughtered every single man, woman, and child. And the streets of Jerusalem were flowing with Muslim blood.
Ibn al-Athir rahimahullah says when they took Jerusalem in 1095, up to 70,000 Muslims were killed in that city. 70,000 Muslims were killed in that city. One of the Christian chroniclers, Albert of Aachen, this is not Muslim propaganda, this is a Crusader saying this. He's writing in his German chronicler, Albert of Aachen. He says that we Crusaders used to take babies and swing them and smash their skulls on the walls.
We all know when Salahuddin entered the city, the Christians were trembling, thinking justly that Salahuddin should do as they did unto them. As you do unto others, it shall be done unto you. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This is the law of humanity. They believed Salahuddin would do the same thing to them. And Salahuddin gave that famous response that the Prophet ﷺ taught us when he conquered Mecca, to forgive and to turn the other cheek. Go, for you are free today. So Salahuddin al-Ayyubi did not do as the Christians had done when they conquered Jerusalem.
And then began the process of cleaning Jerusalem. And so they would perfume the floors. Nuruddin, I will tell you this, and I'm sorry for dragging on, but Nuruddin Zangi rahimahullah, before he died, he made a minbar, like this, beautiful minbar. And he had like this ambition. He says, inshallah, when we recapture Jerusalem, we will install this minbar in Aqsa. Now he died in 1174, and this is now 1187, so that's 13 years difference. Salahuddin, this was by the way in Aleppo. They kept the minbar in Aleppo, Halab. He said, go to Aleppo and bring the minbar of Nuruddin, and we will install it in Aqsa.
And he guaranteed safe passage to every single person. Because you know, mobs get angry, troops get angry. He had troops stationing to protect the Christians from the angry mobs, Muslim mobs, from the angry troops, that nobody is going to harm them. And he let every single man, woman, and child, the same people that had been fighting the Muslims, even the soldiers, were forgiven.
You are free to live in Jerusalem in peace, and if you want to leave, go back to your land. I will escort your people under my security, under my army, to the coast. And then you can go back to your land. This is how merciful Sultan Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahmatullahi was. And he even spared the king, Guy de Lusignan. He spared him, he let him go. And that was a mistake he made. He should not have let him go. He let him go because he promised that I will never come back and fight the Muslims. And same thing happened. He came back and he continually fought the Muslims, and he caused a lot of trouble afterward.
And this act of magnanimity won the hearts of Europe. So to this day, Saladin is a hero even amongst the non-Muslims because of this act of generosity.
And this is what makes him magnanimous in the eyes of Europeans and the Crusaders. And the ransom was a very small amount of money. In today's value, $50. So every person had to pay that much to get their freedom and leave the city. And often, to the dismay of the treasurers of Saladin, he set poor men, women, and children free without even paying that. The Balians' two sons, and this is depicted in Christian sources, by the way. They were so friendly that they would come and visit Saladin in his tent, and two of his children would sit, they narrate a story when the two children were sitting on his lap, and Salahuddin starts to cry. And they ask him, why are you crying? He goes, today I inherit the city, but tomorrow someone else will. So this world is just a transient. He just reminded himself that at that point in time. So it's stories like this that really impressed the Europeans. And they were later told over and over again in books. He was really a gentle person. I mean, he had to fight wars and make sometimes tough decisions, but in the end, he's just an ordinary human being. And he was actually known to be a Sufi as well, somewhat, or spiritual person. And he also allowed the Jews to come and enter the city and inhabit Jerusalem along with Muslims. And then obviously capturing Jerusalem after 90 years was a great achievement, and it's all Muslims rejoiced. Naturally, Christians lamented, and Salahuddin returns back to Damascus to a hero's welcome. You know, people considered Salahuddin both a hero and also a wali, or a living saint. And there was even a day reserved in Damascus for everyone to come and see him, look at him. People just wanted to see him in person. And but a few weeks later, he gets ill and he dies. And in his death, what he left behind was 1 gold dinar and 40 silver coins, and nothing else. You know, with all these battles that Salahuddin fought, there's always the spoils of war. He always distributed to his soldiers. He never got anything himself. And there wasn't enough money to cover for his funeral costs. You know, that's the man for you, that's the leader. And I think this is what makes leaders great, that they're magnificent.